Shortly after 6 a.m. on the 24th of May 1941, HMS Hood, the pride of the Royal Navy, disappears beneath the icy waves of the Denmark Strait. She sank with more than 1,400 crew on board, and in today's episode, I shall be talking about the sinking of HMS Hood. HMS Hood was the first and only ship of her class. Construction began on her in September 1916. Following British losses during the Battle of Jutland, her plans were reconfigured and extra armour was added to the Hood's design. The increased weight spread along the ship's hull would, in theory, subject the vessel to extreme stresses, and as such, it became necessary to incorporate additional reinforcement to the hull for strengthening purposes. She was launched on the 22nd of August 1918, and after completing her sea trials, she was commissioned into the fleet in May 1920. The mighty Hood, as she became known, was 860 foot long. She weighed over 47,000 tons, and at the time, she was the largest warship afloat when she was commissioned. She was armed with 8 15-inch guns in 4 twin turrets as her main armament, and had a variety of other weapons which gave the ship protection from the air as well as the sea. Due to the many increases in her armour and protective plating, she was much heavier than originally planned. The extra weight forced her to sit substantially low in the water, and she was actually considered one of the wettest ships in the fleet. In the interwar period, HMS Hood flew the British flag all over the world on many deployments. She was an incredibly popular ship, and she drew large crowds when she arrived in ports. Hood has been described as one of the best-looking ships produced. By the outbreak of the Second World War, HMS Hood was a tired old veteran and in desperate need of modernisation. A full refit for her was scheduled in 1939, but when the war started, this was delayed. She had also been overtaken technologically by new British ships such as the Prince of Wales, which was smaller than the Hood, but far more advanced. As with most new ships, however, Prince of Wales inevitably had teething problems and suffered many breakdowns. Annoyingly for the British, newer German ships, such as the Bismarck, were further advanced than the Hood. In 1941, the Battle of the Atlantic was in full swing. Under the waves, Hitler's U-boats were wreaking havoc upon merchant ships and their escorts. The Admiralty was also concerned about larger, faster, and more powerful enemy warships in the Atlantic, such as the Bismarck and the Prince Eugen, and the potential damage which they could cause. When news that the Bismarck and the heavy cruiser Prince Eugen had left port and were headed for sea, the Prince of Wales and the Hood, as well as several escort ships, were dispatched to intercept them. On the 23rd of May 1941, the German ships were spotted by 2 British ships, HMS Norfolk and HMS Suffolk. News was quickly passed to the Hood and the Prince of Wales, and the 2 ships moved to intercept in the Denmark Strait between Greenland and Iceland on the 24th of May. The 2 forces came into contact some 300 miles off the coast of Iceland just after dawn. Prince Eugen opened fire at a range of around 14 miles. With her second salvo, the Hood was hit, and serious damage was caused which inflicted casualties upon her crew. HMS Hood was preparing to reply, and had the Bismarck in her sights. While ranging her guns, a salvo from the Bismarck plunged through Hood's deck armour and exploded in the battle cruiser's after turret magazine, detonating some 100 tons of explosives. The ship violently juddered upon impact, throwing its crew around. Flames burst out of her. This was then followed by an almighty explosion. The Hood, the most famous ship in the Royal Navy's fleet, had been destroyed, and in just 3 minutes she sank below the waves. And just 3 of her crew survived. They were Ordinary Signalman Ted Briggs, able seaman Robert Tilburn, and midshipman William Dundas. The 3 surviving men bobbed in the water clinging to the wreckage, the only survivors of a crew of over 1,400 men. They were eventually picked up 3 hours later by HMS Electra. Prince of Wales continued to duel with the German ships. She was outgunned though, and after sustaining several hits which took out her bridge and wrecked her mechanically, she was forced to flee. Crucially, however, the Bismarck was also wounded. A round from the Prince of Wales had damaged its fuel supply, and thus it had become contaminated. The Bismarck was forced to head for port for repairs. Its fate, however, will be decided a few days later. That, though, is a story for another day. HMS Hood would lie hidden below the surface of the Denmark Strait until July 2001, when she was eventually found. She currently lies in 3 sections. In 2012, an expedition was authorised by the British government to return to HMS Hood's resting place, and in the expedition, they retrieved one of the ship's bells. The destruction of HMS Hood was the largest loss of life on a single ship in the history of the Royal Navy. It was a dark day for all those in Britain, and especially the men of the Admiralty. Well, that concludes today's episode on HMS Hood. If you enjoyed today's video, why not hit like and subscribe, as it really does help the channel. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all on the next video. Cheery bye.